In today's video, we're going to be talking to Brian, who's absolutely crushing it by having a strategic game plan. He didn't overcomplicate anything. He just followed the roadmap to a T, and now he has a property cash flowing him $2,000 a month. We're going to talk about how he chose a specific market. We're even going to deep dive into one of his properties. We're also going to talk about how he was able to convince multiple landlords of this business model and also handpick the best one. All right, we got Brian O'Leary here. He's got a property up and running in Iowa who's absolutely crushing it. Seen his listing. It looks beautiful. So Brian, if you don't mind, just kind of giving the people an introduction, some of your background, we can go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Preston. Thanks for having me. My background is I work in information technology in Iowa, and I've got a good job. I enjoy it, but I was just looking for other sources of income. I've had a rental property before, still have one rental property, and it just wasn't situated in a good place for a short-term rental, and I wanted to expand, and instead of expanding into purchasing more properties, I decided to check out this arbitrage model that I heard about from you, and got my first one up and running, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Nice. So let's talk about the whole long-term rental, because that's something that I focused on for the first 3.5 to 4 years of my career. And obviously, there's a lot of benefits that come with real estate, but I think the one thing that it lacks is the cash flow potential, right? And so, what were some of your experiences with your long-term rental? What made you want to shift over to the short-term rental game?
I've had positive experience with the long-term rental, but I get a tenant in there for a year or two. I think the longest I had a tenant in there was for 3, and it just found that the longer I had a tenant in there, then just the more work I had to do when they left to get another one up and running. And it was cash flowing well, but I was really looking for something to boost cash flow. I do want to own more. I want to have more assets that I own. So I'm using the arbitrage model to get there. I'm just going to use it to bring in more cash, and then properties that make sense, I'll see if there's an opportunity to switch from renting to owning, or maybe down the line I'll just be looking for properties to purchase and to then put on the market as a short-term rental. But I've really enjoyed the short-term model. I like working with the guests and just being part of their vacation experience. Our experience so far has been that the house has been kept in really great condition, and just having our professional cleaner in there after every guest, certainly we're preventing the long-term issues that I've had to deal with when I have a tenant in a single place that's been living there for a year or 2 years.
No, that's great. It's great stuff. And similar experience to me, right? Because I have experience both in the short-term rental and the long-term rental space. And obviously, if you vet your short-term rental guests properly up front, then they treat your house sometimes just as good as you would treat your own house. So yeah, what are some of the challenges that you saw from what are some of the main differences that you see from a long-term rental versus a short-term rental? Maybe some pros and cons of each, just so we can kind of get an idea, because obviously I'm going kind of all in on the short-term rental game. Not saying there's anything wrong with the long-term rental side, but just want to hear from your perspective on that front.
My perspective is pros and cons. So pro with the long-term rental is that you sign that lease and you're going to have someone in there for the long haul. But then the cons is that always doesn't work out right. I'll work out for you, right? There's going to be months where the payment's not coming in, and then you've got to chase that down. There's problems. Neighbors have problems with what's going on the property, and so that's the cons. And so the pros I'm seeing with the short-term rentals is that the money's up front, so I've gotten paid before they've even entered into the property. But then the downside is the turnover. I'm constantly looking for guests to be in my home every single weekend. I want every single weekend booked, and then part of the week as well. So more work, but more reward in the short-term rental space. But with as much of the automation as I could do, following the steps that you provided in the arbitrage class, I've been able to really manage how much time I have to put into it each week. And it's just a lot of fun to see a new guest, get that notification that a new guest is coming, and then all the automated messages go out, and then I just have to basically take care of if they have a special question that comes in.
Yeah, love it. That's one of the things that I do really like. Obviously, it's a little bit more work with the short-term rental side, but then you are rewarded with that higher cash flow potential. Yep. right? And so that's something that I really do like about that model. So shifting gears a little bit, if you don't mind talking about how are you able to find this property? What did that conversation look like with the landlord, and how are you ultimately able to secure the deal with them?
Yeah, so I was searching on Zillow for places in my target market and found maybe 4 or 5 properties that I was interested in. And I was able to get 3 landlords on board. Not completely sold initially, but it wasn't a no. So I was able to get them to the point where we could talk about me coming and seeing these properties in person. And I was just following the script provided from the roadmap, tailored to my personality. I think that's important for people to do. Take that script, but then you need to be able to have a casual conversation with someone and not make it sound like you're reading from a script. So it's got to be tailored to how you talk and how you interact with people. I would say I had a lot of confidence in the model after going through the roadmap and just knowing exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. So I was able to portray that confidence when I was talking to these landlords. And so then the next step was to go look at the properties. Out of the 3, 1 just got me really excited. I didn't want to leave the property. My wife and I wanted to buy the property and stay there. And I thought, okay, that's the type of place that I want to put on the market as a short-term rental. Because if I'm excited about it, it's going to be an easy sell on Airbnb or Vrbo. So I ended up going with that one. Turned the other 2 down. And so I've just got the 1 right now. The biggest hurdle I had to overcome to seal the deal was to prove that I could do what I was going to say I was going to do. And that was where I was a little hesitant because I was brand new to this model. And so that's where just having a group of people behind me was really helpful. I was able to tell her, yes, while I am new to this, I am part of a team that has done this for dozens of homes, and they are super hosts. And here's a link to a few of those. You can check them out. The level of quality photos, reviews that you're seeing on these listings, that's what I'm going to bring to your property. And so that just really helped seal the deal, and was able to close on the house in January, and then we got her on the market in February.
Awesome. A lot of great nuggets in there. So I think one of the main things that stuck out is being a part of a community that you can kind of lean back on, because I know that's a fear of a lot of new hosts is, oh, I'm brand new to this. How do I present that to the landlord? Do I lie? And I'm like, no, first, if you're a part of a community that has your back, that can, help you, guide you along the steps that you need if you don't have answers to certain questions. And also just, leaning on the expertise of people that have come before you, I think is huge. Is obviously was able to help you secure that deal. So that's, kind of how I got started as well, being able to rely on others' expertise, and kind of have them vouch for you while you're getting your footing and show them that you're actually legitimate. I think it's really cool that you were able to do that. All right, so we have Brian's listing here, and obviously, like he was mentioning, he didn't want to leave this place, and you can tell that right away just from the photos. And so, Brian, if you want to just kind of walk us through your thought process on the design, what kind of inspiration you took from it, and then we can also talk about some of the updated photos that you're planning on here.
Sure. So it's all about knowing your area. And so I was in a part of Iowa that has a lot of history right along the Mississippi River. And so I was looking for a large house, had a lot of history behind it. And so that's exactly what we got here. So this is a large 4-bedroom house with a beautiful front porch that overlooks the downtown area and the Mississippi River, and you can see 3 states from the front porch. We just wanted to keep it clean. We love the bedrooms like you're scrolling through there. One thing we did with that bedroom there was we added the bunk beds so that we could get the 10 guests sleeping in the 4 bedrooms. The other 3 bedrooms each have a queen. And so it's just keeping that historic look but still modern. This home was built in the early 1900s, and then you just scroll past those pink and green bathrooms. That was just something from that era. It's just something really cool, historical about this part of Iowa. And so that's still original to the home, but everything else has been pretty much updated by the owner of the house. They did a lot of that work. So for us, it was just getting furniture in there that looked that matched everything, get everything staged the way we wanted it to. And then we had a professional photographer come in that had experience with short-term rentals. It was important to us that we didn't just stage for photos, but we took photos of what the guest was going to experience when they arrived there. So we made sure everything looked good, that it was staged nice, But then that's how it's going to look when you enter this home, and you're going to get exactly what you were hoping to get when you looked at the photos on our listing.
Yeah, I think one of the main things, because you'll see sometimes where, obviously photos can be deceiving, right? And so if you have a house, and we've gone this on a lot of our properties where, the reviews are like, the property actually looks better in person than it did in the photos. That's the biggest compliment that you can get. And so, because you're always wanting to, undersell and then overachieve, right? And so I feel like just looking at these listing pictures, I can totally, see that. And I'm sure you've seen it in person and you've been there, you didn't want to leave. And I also really like this. Honestly, like in a way, like this could have turned out like really tacky and kind of outdated, but I think it really works really well with the overall theme of your property.
Thank you. And so then you had mentioned, yes, I do want to do some updated photos. We had taken these photos in the wintertime. So when I joined your class, I joined in early January. We got this property by the end of January, and we were taking photos in February. And so in Iowa, there's snow on the ground. And the best part about this house is the front porch. And so we've got our photographer coming back at the end of April, early May, and we're going to be taking new outdoor pictures without the snow. We want all the green leaves and the green grass, and then we want to show off that front porch. Nice view from the front, just putting our guests in the chairs there as they're looking out at the front porch and out at the downtown and the Mississippi River.
Love it. And I love that you're constantly thinking about the guest experience and how to continue to, increase that. Because I feel like a lot of people, they, set up the listing and then that's that, right? They don't touch it again. But, someone like you who's constantly thinking about how they can improve their listing, how they can improve the guest experience is only going to have more reviews coming in and ultimately make more money from your listing. So I think you're definitely thinking about this.
Sure, thank you. Way. Yeah, a couple of things or places where we made changes, like we added a dedicated office space, which I don't even have in the pictures here yet, because while I took a photo from my phone, I wanted to wait for a professional photographer to come back, but we now have a dedicated office space. We know a lot of people are still working when they travel. Oh, just adding, we've had guests that, asked if there was a crib or like a gate, child gate, and we just said yes. We went out and bought it, and we thought, this is a 4-bedroom house catered to families, so it's going to be good to have those things and be able to say yes to future guests. So we've been adding as we hear requests like that, and then it could be an immediate yes next time someone comes back or checks out our property and wants to know if it's kid friendly.
Super important to listen to your guests, right? I think a lot of people will just ignore their guests and be like, oh yeah, that's not worth it. But we found like kind of universally across all our properties, because a lot of them are catered towards families, are like little things that you don't really think about, pack and plays. Yep. And kid friendly, making sure that's all taken care of. So love that you're thinking about that and adding those things too. So let's talk about cash flow numbers, right? So what are we looking at cash flow wise on this property? What are you projecting through the rest of this year?
So cash flow wise, we just started becoming cash flow positive in March. So we went live in February, but as you can imagine, didn't have a lot of bookings just yet. But in March, cash flow positive, probably in the $1,500, $2,000 a month range as we approach the summer. We just missed Superhost status since they reevaluated that on April 1st, and we did not have 10 guests before the April 1st. But we had our 5-star reviews and whatever the other criteria were, we met that. So for us, it's just competing with the other larger homes in this market, and we've got a little bit of competition, but their Superhost status and maybe a little bit higher on the ranking, and that's what we're competing with and hoping to reach that point where we're getting that $2,000 a month cash flow.
Nice. So what are some things that you're doing with your property to stand out from the competition? Because I think that is something that's going to be increasingly important, whether that's through design, through guest experience, through reviews. So what are some of the ways that you're looking at to stand out from the rest of the crowd?
Some of it we've already hit. We're trying to stand out with like the amenities of the house, the front porch, and really draw attention to that with the new photos that we're working on. Price is another place where we are trying to stand out. I don't want to stand out too much on price. I'm just trying to beat the competition a little bit until we've really established ourselves and are high in the rankings, and then maybe we don't even have to try to compete on price with others in the area. But just keeping the listing updated. If I've got a small tweak to make, I'm going to make it and go in there and make that adjustment, and just so that Airbnb and Vrbo knows that the listing is active, and making those small adjustments and just showing them that we're an active listing on their platform.
Great. No, love that. And obviously, things, especially in this space, it's not just set and forget it. There are little tweaks you have to make to continue optimize, continue to push your listing to the front. So you're definitely thinking about this in the right way. So let's talk about kind of some future goals. Obviously you have property number 1 up and running. It's been successful. So what are we looking at, for goals for the rest of this year on, property number 2, 3, or whatever your goals are for your portfolio?
So my goal before I even had this property was to get a property up and running every quarter. So I wanted to have 4 by the end of this year, and then continue that next year. So in quarter 1, we got our first property up and running. The challenge with getting a second one up and running in quarter 2 is that we haven't been through our busiest season yet for our market. So cash flow wise, just not a lot of extra reserves sitting in the business account. So I don't know yet if I'll be getting the second property up and running in quarter 2, but I'm certainly looking at properties. Want to be ready to pull the trigger on that if we decide to move forward. But in general, that's our goal, is a property a quarter, and then that's short term. Longer term then is kind of what I said earlier, want to start to own some properties in addition to leasing some. So I think some properties are going to make complete sense to just lease. Other properties I think are going to make sense to own, and so we'll be making those choices down the road.
Love it. So are you looking to kind of just dominate your market, and just because you have experience there, are able to figure out and have a competition over the edge of someone that might not be as familiar, or are you looking to expand into other markets?
I want to expand. So we started in this market because I wanted to start somewhat close to home. I really appreciate the advice and guidance you give on remote setup. For me personally, I just wanted to be really hands-on with my very first property. I wanted to be there. I wanted to stage it. I wanted to see what things were looking like from beginning to end. And I'm probably going to set up more properties in this market just to take advantage of everything that we have in place, cleaners, handymen, all that footwork that's already been done. I want to take advantage of that and have a couple more properties here. But then I want to expand into more profitable cities, and those are going to be further away from where I live. I'm going to be setting those up full remote and following the strategies that you've outlined in the roadmap.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's a strategy that a lot of the students do take, is being somewhat familiar with the properties in their surrounding markets, and then once they have a really good understanding of how the ins and outs work, finding a reliable boots on the ground team, then it just becomes way easier to go and do this no matter where you are, 500, 2,000 miles away from you. So I think that's a really good strategy to have. So let's talk about, lifestyle wise, right? Because this is a huge reason why I think me and a lot of other people, I'm sure you're included in that, we wanted to move into, because once you set up the property, you can automate a lot of this business. So how many hours per week do you feel like you're actually working on the property now that everything's run up and live?
Oh, I've not really tracked that, but I would say probably an hour to 2 hours a week. Some weeks more, but a lot of that might just be like, it's time to do some bookkeeping or other things like that. But just the property itself, it pretty much runs itself. With the boots on the ground team, there's not a lot for me to do. So it's just kind of the back end stuff and getting everything bookkeeping wise, and then just looking to expand. That's probably where I'm spending my time right now, is on Zillow and looking for other properties. So hard for me to say how much is spent just on this one property, but it's not a lot, and I appreciate that about this business.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's something that a lot of people, like me included, when I first started, I'm like, well, there's no way that I'm going to have to be able to trust a cleaner to clean the properties, and what if I don't have an on-site manager, and all these other what ifs came up. But once you really know and understand how the business model works and be able to set up the proper systems, processes, software, and all that, then it's really can be a pretty passive investment, which is obviously something that a lot of us are looking for. So yeah, Brian, let's talk about before to wrap this up, like what's something that you would advice that you would give to someone who's looking to start their own Airbnb business, just kind of pieces of advice, things that you've learned along the way.
Well, I would say you need a community, and like this roadmap from Preston, I can't tell you how many times early on I needed someone to go to with a question, and it's just because it was new to me, and it gave me that confidence to move forward when I was able to have someone respond directly to me with advice about the property I was thinking about leasing. Because for me that was the big step. Like, I had done all the research and made phone calls, and not a big deal there. But then when you're about to sign a lease, then you're like, man, am I about to do the right thing? And just having someone else there to look through your numbers, look at the market, do their own assessment, and then say, thumbs up, man. I think this is a solid property. If it was me, I'd go for it. And that just gave me the boost that I needed. And there's a lot of organizational skills that are required to set up something like this. So you need to have checklists. You need to know what you're going to do first, second, and third. And so I think that's my advice for someone looking to start a business like this, is just know what it is that you need to do to get the bank account open for a business, get your LLC formed, set up a website, some of the things that you might not think of. And it was helpful to me to have a checklist that you provided to me, Preston. So I was just able to march through that list and get everything set up in a pretty short period of time.
Awesome, man. Well, a lot of great things that you shared today. Thanks for hopping on, showing your beautiful listing, and best of luck with the upcoming properties. And we'll talk to you soon, man.